Yeah, good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we started discussing about functions. So, we learned about JavaScript functions. In that, we discussed about function declaration and signature and definition. What is function declaration and what is function signature and definition? These are the basic things. Okay, so in this declaration, signature, definition, so how the functions are configured. Next, we discussed about uh, parameterized parameterized functions. So in this, we learned why we need parameters. Right. In parameterized functions, the first point, parameters are used to parameters are used to modify the function. What is the purpose of parameter? To modify function. If there is no parameter, function will do the same task every time. So parameters can modify the function, and here parameters defined in function declaration are known as what? Formal parameters. They are known as formal parameters. Formal parameter means the parameters that are defined in the declaration. While declaration, whatever you give, that means, for example, so we have a function, some name, and here we have parameter. So this is called formal parameter. That is formal parameter. Now parameters defined in function call are known as what? Actual parameters. That means wherever you call the function, into that we will pass some values. These are called actual parameters. That is parameters. Now, while defining parameters, so very important is one example I already showed you, how the parameters can modify the functionality. So depending on how many parameters a function carries, a function takes. So compiler, what it will do? Compiler specifies them as arguments. That means if a parameter is missing, then what will happen? If a parameter is missing, then the compiler says argument is missing, depending on how many parameters. That means many times people have this doubt, and even in interviews they ask, what is the difference between parameter and argument? Parameter takes the value, and argument defines the structure of function parameters. That means how many parameters it takes, what type of parameters it are. That is all arguments, we call them as. So compiler calls them as arguments and developers call them as parameters. That is. Now here, the question here is what kind of parameters we can have. So that means, let me keep one example also. Already yesterday, one example we done. Already yesterday, this example we done. I will keep that example. This is just, we have a function called print numbers. This function will take a parameter, how many, and that parameter can be used here, right? Now, another important point is a function can have multiple parameters. A function can have multiple parameters. We can have more than one parameter, and any type of parameter. That means a function can have more than one parameter and any type parameter. Any type parameter means, so parameter can be any of primitive types. So any of non-primitive type, and even it can have a function as parameter. That means parameter can be primitive types, it can be non-primitive types, or it can be even a function. You can have a function also as parameter. So that means, see here, suppose I am defining a simple script here. In this, we are creating a function called details. Details is a function. In details function, we are defining the parameter ID, name, stock, and here we have some cities, and here we have rating, and here we have some option like suppose print, like this. Actually, these are all parameters. Now, important is every parameter is just like a variable. That means memory. What is ID? It is the name given for memory. So in that memory, you can store anything. That means, for example, cities is an array. You should not mention like square brace. Just like how you declare a variable, parameter is declared in that way. That means just you need a name. In that name, you can store anything. That means you can store a string or a number or a boolean based on what type of content you are trying to store. You have to handle the logic. For example, see, we have to print. So here we are using document.write and I am printing here details. So the details we are printing here. So ID. What is the ID? ID will come from ID, whatever ID they pass. In the next line is name. Name means whatever name. Usually name is a string type. And we have stock. Stock is a boolean type. Then I will put a binding expression. So if stock is equal to true, then question mark, we will put an available. Otherwise, we will put as out of stock. This is ternary operator. Already we learned it, right? Now we have cities. Cities is array. That means we will print here cities dot toString. It will print all the cities. Another, we have in the next line rating. Rating. So here we have rating, rate and count. We need to display both. That means here we are adding how many. So these many means rating dot rate. Rating dot rate means now you are expecting this rating to be object. In that we have a property called rate. Now another, so we have print. Print is nothing but it is a function. Suppose print is a function. We can call the function and use it. Let's do one thing. For print, we will use another function. We will design another function for functions so that you can understand clearly. So in this currently we have primitive types and non-primitive types. So now we have to just call the details. Whenever we are calling details into that first ID. ID is a number. Name is a string. And stock is a boolean. And cities is an array. If it is an array in square brace. It is an array of string type. Delhi, Hyderabad, like this. What about last parameter? It is object. In that we have two options. What is it? Rate. Rate will be 4.3 and it will have count. Count will be some count. So this is how we pass the parameters. So what is the parameter type? Rating type of object. What is the cities type? Array. What is the stock type? Boolean. Name is string, ID is number. So if anyone asks what type of parameters we can have in a function, any type, it can be string or a number or a boolean or a array or an object. You can have any type. Now when I run this, you can see it is going to print all those details. So every time you can call the function and you can pass different details. So reviews, I defined some reviews. Yeah. So it will display in this way. So a function can have more than one parameter. Any type of parameter can be there in a function. It can be formal, it can be primitive or non-primitive. Not only that, actually, I will copy this example. This is primitive type and non-primitive. You can have a function also as parameter. Let's see another one I will give here. Suppose we have a function, verify password. Verify password is a function. In this, it will take, so password, that is a string, and a success and failure. Now, if you remembered, we learned fetch method. Fetch method will, how fetch method works, syntax you remembered. So how the fetch method works syntactically. So fetch method have fetch is fetch. Fetch is actually having, it's a function. It is having URL as parameter. And if URL is correct, then it have then function. If first then catches the data successfully, then it have another then function. That will First, then we'll convert data into JSON. Second, then we'll use the data. It have actually another one, like we have catch, we have throw, like this we can use so many. Now, what is URL type? URL type is a string type. What is then? Then is not a string, then is a function. It is a function type. That means generally, if anybody asks why you need a function as parameter, we need functions as parameters to handle a situation called callback. So functions are used as parameters to handle callbacks. What is callback? Callback means function executes according to situation. That means we have success function, failure function. Will both execute? Both will not execute depending on situation. If URL, a password is correct, success function will execute. If not, failure will execute. That means you are having a set of functions, but which function executes, that depends on situation. This mechanism is called as callback. So here we are writing condition. If password is equal to some admin is the password, then success function should work. Success is a function. How to call a function? Parenthesis. This tells that success is the function type. Otherwise, else what should happen? Failure. Failure is also a function. That means it doesn't mean that parameters can be function type. Means in the parameter you mention like this. Every parameter is just a name. Even it is an array or a function or anything, it is just a reference name. So now I'm accessing here. Means how do we pass now? So we are writing verify password. In that first parameter is password. Password I given as suppose some John password. After that, success is a function. Then we have to write a function. This is function. Now in this function, there cannot be name. This function cannot have a name. Why? Because already it have a name. That these functions without names are called as anonymous functions. A function without name is called as anonymous function. Why we are using an anonymous function? Because it is stored under a name. I will show you anonymous separately also. So, but here why function cannot have a name? Because already it have a name. Under that name, the functionality will be handled. That means now you have to just tell what to do. So what to do? So document.write, it should say login success. Otherwise, we have another function to write, another function. What this function have to do? So document.write. Document.write, it should say invalid password. This is failure function. That means, so first verify password will take value. You can do one thing. You can even put here a prompt and you say enter password. You can define like that. That means now whatever you entered in the prompt, it will be stored in this password. If password is matching to admin, then success function will execute. That means this function will execute. Otherwise, second function will execute. That means which function have to execute, that is not decided by you. The which function will execute, that is decided by the situation according to value. According to value. This mechanism is called callback. So you see here, when I refresh, it is asking password. I entered password as suppose some wrong manager. Then it says invalid. Now I am using here another password admin. Then it says login success. This is called callback mechanism. That means every function can have parameter, primitive type or non-primitive type or even function. So function type parameters are used to handle callback. They are used to handle callback. What is callback? Callback is the process of invoking any function according to state and situation. That means function will not execute always. Function will invoke and execute according to the state and situation. That is what callback means. So a function parameter can be a function. So in that case, this is example. This is example for that. This is example for function parameters. This is example. So you can have primitive types, non-primitive type, or you can have a function. So parameters can be any type. If anybody asks, can we have two arrays as parameters, two objects as anything? You can have anything. One array, two arrays, any number of arrays you can have. Only the point is, based on that, you have to pass the values. You have to access the values. For example, I want to create a function which should print values of any array. I want to create one function that should print values of any array, string array, normal array, any array. Then what we do? We write a function. So print array. In that, we will part some collection and you pass the collection. Then we write a for var item of what is it? Collection. Document.write. So we will print the item. That means now you can use this function to print any array. Any array. That means suppose I am using print array. Into that I am passing some values, some daily. It is string type values. And you can see print array is going to print those values. Suppose I am accessing print array. Into that I passed some numbers. So I passed some numbers. Then this can print those numbers. So I am using some print array. So in that we are passing objects. Array of objects. Now if it is array of objects, that means it have name. So some TV, some price, like this. Now we will see how do we handle other object types also. So we have name, mobile, so some price. So like this we have array of objects. Something like this. That means we are printing. So these also, that means we are printing array. Yeah. Oh, where is it? It is. This is parenthesis. Okay. Yeah. Now it is accessing that and displaying. Now you can see it is printing object. Why? Because they are objects now. They are objects. Now we have to write a condition. Condition is what? If the value is an string or number, then print normal. If it is an object, then print in different way. That means what we have to do, if you are expecting a collection of an object type, then you have to write a condition here. Understood? If what, if type of collection, understood? Type of collection is equal to, what is the type of collection? It is an object. Then what to do? If not, what to do? So we have to write logics. We will see some examples we will discuss, then we can handle anything. That means this is a array. This is a function which is printing array. But if different type of values is passed, then we have to handle that. For that we need to write some condition. I will tell you return types, then we can handle those easily. So initially you created one function which can print any kind of values. This is simple, the point to understand. That means function can have any type of parameter. It can be primitive type or non-primitive type, or it can be even a function. But one important is every parameter in a function is mandatory. Every parameter in a function is mandatory. Now, if value is not passed, then it returns undefined. So every parameter is mandatory. If values are not passed, then it will return undefined. That means, for example, see, suppose we are creating function print details. In details function, we have name and we have price. Suppose price is not available at a situation, but for some products price is available. Then how? Just now I told you that we have to write the conditions. That means what we do, we will say that we have a condition that price may be ignored sometimes. In that case, we write if price is equal to undefined. If price equal to undefined, what to do? Document dot write. So then print only name. You have to print only name. That means document dot write, and we have to print only name. That's it. If price is defined, then document dot write, we have to print both name. So we have to print the name and as well as what? Price. That is how we have to define condition. That's what I told you just now. That when a parameter is passed, we can verify, is it number, is it string, is it object? If object, then do one work. If it is string, do another work, depending on what type it is, right? So here, whenever we are passing details, and into that, first I am entering some name. So then price is not entered. If I don't write this logic, if I directly try to print name and price, then what will happen? It will print price undefined. Now it will not do that because you haven't passed price. Then what it will do? It is going to print only name. If you passed the price also, then it is going to print that price. Otherwise, it will not print. If you don't write the logic in that way, then what happens? Suppose you return only this line. You return only that line. You haven't written this condition. Then what happens? You pass it the name and price is undefined. So if you think any parameter is optional, then for that parameter, you have to write a condition that if it is undefined, what to do? Can there be more than one parameter undefined? Yes, you can have multiple parameters as optional, multiple parameters as optional. Then generally for every parameter you have to write condition. So that is one important thing you need to know, that if a function have parameters, it is mandatory to pass all those parameters. If you are not passing any parameter and that parameter is being used, then it will return undefined. Then you have to handle that by using a logic undefined. This is example. So how to handle? Now another point is how many parameters like this we can pass. How many parameters we can pass? So actually, as per ECMA standards, every function allows maximum 1024 parameters. It is not length, it is number of parameters. 1024 parameters are allowed. That is the maximum length of parameters. So that means another point is passing many parameters is always a risky one for application. Why it is risky for application? Because lot of injection attacks means hacking happens through these parameters only. That means if any hacker is trying to affect your application, he will be trying that by passing some parameters. If your application is allowing parameters, then that is dangerous. That means obviously we have to allow parameters, but limit. We have to make sure that we are securely accessing parameters, because these parameters lead to injection attacks. So we call them as, so many are there. We have SQL injections, means related to database. For example, injection attacks means, see, suppose there is a option like, suppose means a text box we given. So product ID, we entered product ID. Now in this product ID, here we put a text box so that user can enter product ID and he can submit the product ID, he can submit. Generally what happens is, for this, in the background we write logic. That means we have a function. This function is working as details. Into this function it is expecting ID. Now you are using insert, we are using delete also parameters. That means what happens? It will get the ID details, am I right? After that it will do operations like inserting, it will do operations like deleting. Now generally if it is a hacker, so actually he need to enter only ID. Then what he will do? He will enter a ID. After entering the ID, he will pass a command. So delete from table inside the text box only, and he will submit. That means inside the text box, he is going to write this command and he will submit the command, and that command is automatically submitted here. Then it will delete the data. But hacker have to know what table you are dealing with. If he knows, he can delete. These are called injection attacks. That means allowing them to write queries and pass parameters and affect our application. This is very dangerous for applications. That is the reason, as much as possible, we will reduce the number of parameters to be passed. For that, actually, so JavaScript ES5 and higher versions introduced introduced REST parameters. What a REST parameter is nothing but a REST parameter. A REST parameter allows multiple arguments. That means one parameter will allow many arguments. Then you don't need to mention so many parameters. One parameter will take everything. So that is what advantage of REST parameter. For example, see here. Suppose we need to take name, price. So like that. We need to take name, price, stock, all these things. Instead of passing so many, what we will do is we will create one REST parameter. REST parameter is defined with 3 dots, dot, and parameter name. So 3 dots for REST parameter and parameter name. Parameter name is some product. So, or say product details, that is the parameter name. Now, here, what we are expecting here is in that product detail. That means one parameter collecting all. Now, remember, this REST parameter is considered as, so REST parameter is defined using dot and parameter name. And very important, it is array type. It is array type. Array type means what? So array type means one reference for multiple values. One reference for multiple values. Now, if you remembered, we learned about destructuring array. I told you destructuring array, how array is destructured. That means now see what I am doing here. Var. In that var, now I have some name, I have price, and I have stock. These are coming from where? Product details. Product details. That means now how many values you are handling? 3. But how many parameters you are having? Only 1. That means you may handle hundreds of values, but parameter is only 1. Actually, to handle these 3, we need 3 parameters. Now we can create only one parameter which can handle all the 3 or 4 or 100. REST parameter is 3 dots only. Dot. Now here we are defining. So document dot write, we can print the details now. Name is equal to whatever entered inside name. And price is equal to whatever entered in price. And stock is equal to, so whatever entered in stock. You can write anything, right? True or false. I am just printing that. Now, how we pass whenever we access details into that. Now it is a REST parameter type. See, its type is given as any array. That means REST parameter type is any array. That means now in the first place, so we have name, okay, comma, second parameter price, third parameter stock, true or false. That means parameter is only one, but it is accepting multiple arguments. One parameter can handle multiple arguments. That means it will not allow to configure more than one parameter, and under one reference you can store many values. Now you can see all are working fine. That means now you can see everything is working fine. So what are REST parameters? REST parameters are nothing but REST parameters. One parameter allows multiple arguments. One parameter is going to allow multiple arguments. That is what actually REST parameters. So this is one example for that, how we can handle. But here so many rules are there for REST parameter. What are the rules for REST parameter is, the rule for REST parameter, you can define other parameters along with REST parameter. You can define other parameters along with REST parameter, but REST parameter must be the last parameter in formal list. This is rule, compulsory. That means, you see here, many times people ask this question: when I have REST parameter, can I have other parameters also along with it, or I need to use only REST parameter? You can have other parameter also. That means what I will do here, I am writing another parameter called title. I am writing another parameter called title. In that case, you see, I written title and I want to print the title. Suppose what I will do here, before printing the name, we will print a heading. Okay. In the heading, what we will do? We will print the title. Okay. That means we are printing this title before the other details. Okay, fine. But see, it is showing some error. And see the error. What error? It shows error saying that REST parameter must be last. It must be the last in parameter list. So here, title you defined, but the title must be first, and this REST parameter must be last. Before that, you can have any number of parameters, but after that, you cannot have any parameter. So that means now title should not be last. Which one should be last? For REST parameter must be last. Then title we will put first. Then when you are passing also, at first place we will put title. Understood? In the first place we will put title. What is the title? Suppose product details. That is the title. And you see, it is going to use that and it is going to display. So can we have other parameters? So along with REST parameter, yes, we can have other parameters. But what is the rule? REST parameter must be last in the formal list. Now the question is, why it should be last? Why it should be last? Any idea? What do you say? Any thing you can tell why it should be last? Now, the question is why it should be last. Why it is kept last? Because naturally, that because REST parameter reads up to end. It reads up to end. That means its nature is it will read from begin to end. Then there cannot be anything after end. That means end. It should be end. That means a REST parameter is designed in such a way that it reads up to end. If it reads up to end, there cannot be anything after end. End means last. That is the last. The nature of REST parameter is it is reading up to end. it is designed in such a way that it reads up to end. If it is reading up to end, there cannot be anything else after it. That means should be the end. It should be the end because it is designed. Like, see, I already told you it is array. Array means what? Substring. I mentioned 7 means what? It will start from 7 up to end. How many are there? It will read all. That means I am not mentioning end. I am not mentioning end. So if you are not mentioning end, then if I am not mentioning end, then it will read up to end. REST parameter is using this technique of it uses a substring. By using substring technique, what it will do? It will read up to end. In that case, anything after end cannot be there. That should be the end. So REST parameter reads up to end. Reads up to end. Hence it must be last. It reads up to end means it must be last. So that means after ended, some other value came, then this will be invalid. It cannot read the others. So that is the nature of REST parameter. Now another question is, can we have multiple REST parameters? Can you have multiple REST parameters in a function? No. That means you cannot define multiple REST parameters. You cannot define multiple REST parameters. Now another question is REST parameter type is what? REST parameter type is what? Array type. Can we have another array type parameter along with REST parameter? Can we have array type parameter along with REST parameter? Title is what type parameter? Title is string type. Can we have another array type parameter? Yes, you can have any type, array type or a string type. Only REST parameter must be last. Before that, it can have any number of parameters and they can be any type. For that, you need to handle the logic. So only the point is REST parameter must be the last. So before that REST parameter, you can have any parameter, any type of parameter, right? That is what actually. So this is another example for that to understand. These are all the concept about parameters. Means how we can handle and manage the parameters. Now, depending on this, various logics are asked in interviews. That means they will say that how you write a function which can do a functionality when number is passed. It can do another functionality when string is passed. How you will handle a functionality. That means parameter must be only one. But if it is string parameter, one type of work. If it is a number parameter, another type of work. How to do? Nothing complex. For that, we have to write a condition only. Na? That means just what we have to do here. See, suppose function. So details is a function. In that, we have some parameter, param. Now, this parameter is a string type. Means it is not a number. Then it should just print. If it is a number, then it should do increment and print the increment. Then how? We will write conditions. If is nan param. Am I right? Is nan param means is not a number. Then what we will do? Document.write. We will simply print the parameter. Else, if it is a number, we will do param plus plus, or we do some manipulations on it. After doing the manipulations, we will print document dot write. So value is equal to count is equal to whatever the value of param, like this. That means what we are doing, we are writing the conditions. You can write switch, you can write if, we can write multi-level if else, anything, condition based. That means if it is a number, do one work. If it is a string, do another work. If it is a array, do another work. If it is an object, do another work. You can write a switch case also. So in switch, if case is string, then do this. Because you see, when you are writing switch here, actually we can pass switch. Into that we can pass the parameter. Now what we do is, in the case, we will write here. So that means in the case, we will configure. What is it? So if the parameter, that means actually into this, we will pass the type of parameter. How to pass the type of parameter? We have type of operator, na? Type of param. Then here we can write, if it is number, string, boolean, we can write different. So if it is number, then what should happen? That means we have to define the functionality and break. So if it is a string, what should happen? We can define like that. That is what generally we do by using these kind of decision makings. So if parameter is only one, depending on different type of parameter, you want to handle different functionalities. You need to write logics in this way, because you may think like some other logic may be there. There is no other logic. If anybody asks, according to data type of parameter, function should change. That means it requires some conditions inside. You write with if or else, multi-level if, or you can also use switch cases for handling the conditions, right? This is all about parameters. This is all about parameters. So function parameters. This is parameterized functions. So function parameterless and function parameterized. Next important, after understanding all the concept of parameters. So another important is function with return. Another important is function with return. Actually, why a function needs a return? Generally, functions are defined with return. Why a function needs return? What is the nature of that? Actually, I will tell you the situation here. See, generally, here we are defining. So function addition. In that A and B. Okay. Now what we have to do is, so this is a function, A and B are two parameters. Now, how many memories are allocated for this function? Because it have to store first to do some manipulations on A and B, it needs, function needs memory. That means one memory is allocated for function. Now what about A and B? What about A and B? A separate memory allocated for A and B, or they will use the function memory only? They are function parameters now. If they are function parameters, they will use the function memory. Okay, good. Then the result of A plus B I need to store. The result of some A plus B I need to store so that I can use later. Then where to store the result of A plus B? I'm using var C is equal to A plus B. That means now C is a variable outside function. Now C doesn't belong to C doesn't belong to function. It is outside function. If I make it C also as a parameter, then it is accessible only inside function. It is accessible inside because the result I want to access outside. If I want to access the result outside, generally what we do, global functions, a global variable we learn now. That means what we will do, we will declare var C, and here we will put C is equal to A plus B. That means now result of A plus B will be stored in C so that I can use that result anywhere outside function. So that means C doesn't belong to function. That means we need to separately allocate memory for whom? Separate memory we need to allocate for variable C. So to handle this kind of issues, we are writing a function addition and A comma B. After that, we will use return A plus B. Generally, people who don't know proper programming, if we ask what is return, then they will say returning value. Function returns value. Return is a jump statement. Return is a jump statement. Na? Break, return, continue. These are jump statement. If it is a jump statement, how it returns value? If it is a jump statement, how it returns value? So that is completely baseless point. Right? If anybody says this is returning value, that is non-technical. That means it's not returning value, it is terminating. Return is terminator. That means now why you are using a terminator here? Why you are using a jump statement here? What happens is this return statement, that return statement will stop the function memory. That means it will stop the function memory. After that, what it will do is the result of A plus B, whatever result of A plus B will be there, it will store under this name. Under this name, it will store under this name. That means now your function works as a variable. Your function works as a variable. That means it will do two things. It will do the functionality and it will store the result. So that means now this is called, actually this function is called void type. What is the meaning of void type? Void type means it discards. Void means it discards the memory. It discards the memory. That means the memory allocated for the function, the memory allocated for the function, it will not allow to utilize that memory. After doing the functionality, the memory allocated function will be destroyed. Understood? After allocating the memory for function, it will destroy the function memory. After functionality happened, memory is destroyed. But in the second case, memory is not destroyed. Void means discard memory. Discard memory. That means we are telling that there is nothing returned by this function. You discard the memory. That is the reason general people, while learning C, C++, all this Java programming, they say that void is no return type. Void is not about return type. Void is about whether to keep memory or destroy memory. It is not about return types, because it is about whether to keep the memory or to destroy the memory. Void tells that no need to keep the memory, destroy after the functionality finish. But return here indicates that keep the memory. Why you are keeping the memory? So that whatever result comes from this function, we can store that. That means now addition this addition function name, this function name works as a variable. That means now actually what will be stored here? Addition is equal to a plus b. Understood? That means the result of a plus b will be stored in addition, because return says that disconnect and keep the memory. Now stop and keep the memory. It jumps and keeps the memory. If it doesn't jump, then memory is destroyed. If it doesn't jumps, it will let the function to finish, then memory is destroyed. If return is not mentioned, memory is destroyed. If memory is destroyed, how we can keep value? So why we are using return? We are saying that after doing a plus b, just stop. Don't continue. If you continue, it will terminate. Then if it continues, the function memory is destroyed. That means if it continues, what will happen? If it continues, it will go here. When it goes here, automatically destroyed, function destroyed. That means memory is deallocated. Whatever memory is allocated here, after allocating the memory, when it comes at the end, it is destroyed. Now what you are doing, you are saying before destroying, stop. Return is jump statement now. That means before destroying the memory, stop. That means it will not destroy the memory, it will stop. After stopping, this result will be stored here. That is the architecture behind this. That means it's not like void means not returning value, return means returning value. Even today, even senior experienced people also, they have thought about this. Return means return value, void means no return type. It's not like that. If it is returning, that means actually here it is not strongly typed. Do you know what is the data type? Actually, its data type is number. Its data type is number. If A and B are number, then the type is number. When a data type is defined for any reference, if it is a variable, it is storing a value, then only data type is mentioned. So when a data type is mentioned only when it is handling some value. Why a function is defined with data type? Function is defined with data type to tell that you store this type of value. That means now the function memory is used. Function memory is used. Earlier, that means both are similar functions. But here you need extra variable. But second case, you don't need any extra variable. Function will be used as variable. Now see what will happen here. I am writing here. So a function. So addition. And we have a comma b. And what we will do? Return a plus b. Like this we define. That means what happens? It allocates memory for function. It will perform this operation and it will store that result in addition. And return will discard. Due to that, this will not happen. That means function will not end. If function is not ending, the memory is still available. And what is the memory name now? Addition. Addition is the memory name. So what we have to do? So we have to print that now you treat addition as a variable. Understood? That means you treat this function name as variable name. That means now what you do? Document dot write. So I will put addition. Okay, is equal to call the function first. Call the function addition. Into the function, we will pass 30, 50. Now what happens is it will perform this functionality. You see, it will perform 30, 50. That means it will perform a plus b. And whatever result comes, it will store here. That means it is doing two things. It is performing the functionality and storing the result. To make it more clear, I will do like this then. See, what I will do is I will declare a variable called result is equal to addition of 30 and 50. That means the result of this will be stored inside result. That means anything, you don't need another variable. Why? Because I'm just showing we don't need another variable because this itself is an variable. So you just print that. That means document dot write addition. Addition is equal to what we have to do. Addition of some 40 comma some 24, and you can see this is going to print the result and display. That means it is performing the functionality and storing the result. Suppose you want to know its data type. I will do one thing here. I will use type of addition. Type of addition, then it says it is number. That means how it says function is a number. Addition is a function. Huh? It should say type of addition means it should say function. Type of addition, it should say function. It is not saying function. Why? Because it is finally used as a variable. So actually its type is function. But after doing the functionality, it is now transformed into an variable. That means it is storing the data. So finally it is a function which is transformed into a variable. That is the nature. Right? So this is basically why we need a function with return. That means lot of functionality we perform. After that, the result we need to store. Instead of allocating a separate memory again for that result, we will use the same function memory. So we don't need to do that every time. Every time we don't use function memory. Generally what we do, we will allocate a separate memory and the results of that function, we will store it another place. When we need that to use function memory is actually when you want continuous operations to perform. Continuous operations, one after another, function should chain up the functionalities. In such cases, we use these returns. Later, we will see one example how they are handled also. In different examples, we will see now. So technically, what is the purpose of functions? That means function with return. So what is the purpose of function with return? Actually, so function memory allocated for function is destroyed after the function ends. So return is a jump statement that that terminates the function before it ends, so that it can use the function memory to store data, to store values. That is what actually. That means function with return can do two tasks. What are those? Performing functionality, understood? And second one is storing results. It can do two things. That means it can work as a function, as a variable. So storing the result. That means values are stored in a function reference name. Syntactically, it will be like this. So function, some addition. So a comma b, and we have written a plus b. That's how it is going to manage. That means now addition is equal to A plus B. That means now we can simply access that addition which contains A plus B. Means just a syntax I am giving here. So this is one simple example for that. So why you need a function with return. Now here so many types of questions may come, like can a function have multiple returns? Can a function have multiple returns? Yes, according to decision condition. It can have multiple returns, but only one return will work. It can have multiple returns, but only one return will work. Only one return will work. That means that depends. For example, just now I told you in conditions we write. That means what we do is, for example, so we are writing here A, let's say, suppose. So what is it? Suppose if it is A, and we are simply writing here if, so is NaN, right? Or we say, yeah, is NaN A. That means what it should say, return just that A. If it is a string, right? If it is not a number, if it is a number, then what it should do? It should do A plus plus, means increment A value by 1. And after that, what it have to do? Return A. You can have multiple returns. Depending on the situation, we can do. If condition satisfying, it will return 1. If condition not satisfying, it will return another. Right? Directly you can write return A plus plus. Right? It's not like you have to define in this way. That means it will simply return it, or it will do this increment and it will return. That means, so you can define multiple returns. So that is one option. That means another point is a function can have multiple returns. So as per situation and conditions, that is multiple returns. This is just syntax. Now another point is can we have a return so without storing any result? That means can a function have result? That means here we are saying return we are using to store result. That means, for example, if I am writing like this, document.write, so that is statement 1. So this is statement 1. And actually it is not returning anything, means it is not expecting any value here. Okay. So we have statement 1, we have statement 2, statement 3. So we will put a line break at the end like this. Now I am writing return here directly without anything to return. That means the question means actually not in JavaScript, generally in logical programming, they will ask, can a void method have return keyword? Because void will not return. They will ask the question, can a void method have return keyword? Yes, return is a jump statement you can use anywhere. Because now you know that return is not returning value. That means you just treat it as a jump. So you can have. Then what is purpose here? The purpose is after return, whatever statements are defined, they will not execute. That means we write return in ordinary functions to create unreachable code. Why you return that third statement and you are not saying that don't reach it? That means you see third statement is written, but it is not reaching it. Suppose I call addition, then it will print only first and second statements only. It will print only first and second. third statement is not there. Why you written a third statement and you are not asking the function to reach there? So compiler means actually technically compiler will return in the background saying that unreachable code detected. That means I can't reach that code because there is a return in between. Why you return some statement and why you are asking compiler not to go there? This we generally do in development, because in development statement 1, 2 finished. Statement 3, 4, 5, they are under construction. Then what we have to do? We want to test up to only 1 and 2. Compiler should not go to 3 and 4. They are under construction. Then we call unit testing. Unit testing means each and every part of the design we test. In that case, what happens is there is code. We don't want compiler to go there. So that means code is there. We don't want compiler to go there. Why? Because it is incomplete. If compiler goes there, it will say invalid. Well, so we are terminating. These are called, this mechanism is called stubs. We call this mechanism as stubs, adding stubs to program. Adding stubs to program is just telling it to bypass. Stubs are used in testing, and the purpose of stub is to tell that there is under construction work, so don't go there. You stop here, means up to this only you have to work. Now, if there is any error, there is some error inside the third, fourth statement's error. Now you see document.write spelling is wrong. Now you see refresh here, still it is working. And see here in inspect. So in the console, you see refresh here, there is no error. Why? Because compiler will never reach there. Now what we will do later, we will remove this stub from here. Third is completed, then put here. That means now it will execute. Now it gets the problem. That means even there is error, it will not touch it. Why you are writing return in a void method? To handle this kind of situation. So in programming, if anybody asks, can we have a return keyword in a void method? You can have. Return is not returning value, so you can have it anywhere. So what is the purpose of return in a void method? To terminate. You can terminate the block, you can terminate the function, you can terminate execution from anywhere. It is mostly used for configuring the stubs, right? That is what the meaning of return. So here you can configure return in a void method to define stubs. We call that mechanism as stubs. In testing, we call this as stubs, right? So this is general example for that. This is function with the return. We will see some real examples where we use these returns and how to handle them. That we'll see tomorrow, right? In tomorrow's session, we will discuss the other options. Some more are there about functions. So that's what I said. It's